everybody. Welcome to InPsightRadio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. How is everybody? Hi. I am glad to be with you today. Okay, so as we know, I am not an astrologer, yet there are so many astrological aspects that are massive right now that are going on that I thought it would be really productive to just talk about one great big aspect because it's affecting everything all the way through until the end of 2021. That's right. You heard it here first. Actually, you didn't. You heard it from You heard it from any actual astrologer first. However, it's been coinciding with a lot of angelic messages. So I thought I would just get in there and talk about this because it's literally affecting so many other aspects of people's lives that I think it's important that we talk about it. So what am I talking about? Well, I am talking about the Saturn-Uranus opposition. These two huge planets are pretty much duking it out. They're in an extreme fight ring until 2021 is over. And, well, what's that got to do with anything? You know, these are just super cliff notes. Again, if you talk to a real astrologer, they can really get into the nitty-gritty with you. I'm coming at this from an energetic perspective as well as to correlate this astrology with some information that I've gotten from the angelic realm all about what's going on in our world. And I think that'll be a little helpful for everybody. So let's go back up to the top. So Saturn, these two planets, Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is the rule keeper. I always call Saturn the grumpy 1950s dad, right? Saturn's wandering around going, "Hey, kids, get off my lawn. It's not the rules. Get off my lawn." And Saturn is the keeper of its money, death, taxes, its Excel spreadsheets, conservatism, the way that we do things in which rules are upheld. It's personal responsibility. It's working hard. It is all of the little nitty-gritty details that are rough sometimes to deal with in life. Okay, that's Saturn. Now, it's in this square off, again, for the duration of 2021 with Uranus. And Uranus, the planet that is totally opposite from Saturn. It's, woohoo, let's have a revolution. Let's bring in some really incredible scientific discoveries. Let's go off-world. Sudden changes. To heck with the traditional money system. Let's do crypto instead. I mean, literally, Uranus is everything that Saturn is not. Let's make something new. It's also sudden changes, whereas Saturn is very paced, controlled planning. That's, again, conservatism. Saturn is not anarchy. Uranus is anarchy with a point. You know, Saturn is guided edges and rules. And everybody is so down on Saturn. They're like, "Oh, Saturn sucks. I hate Saturn. It makes me do my taxes. You suck, Saturn." Actually, gang, if we didn't have Saturn, the world as we know it would not exist, okay? And Saturn's not always a downer. It's about how we keep order. It's about order and bringing some sort of system into play throughout chaos. So you've got these two you've got the ordered anarchy planet against the order and tradition planet, and it's duking everything out. Now, this gets a little more complicated. And it gets more complicated because these great big planets that are way out there in our atmosphere, it takes a while for these planets to actually orbit the Earth, right? So this is why when you look at your astrological chart, your sun, your moon, your Mercury, all these planets that are closer to the sun are going to vary from person to person who have close birthdays far more than will those folks, you know, Jupiter, Uranus, Saturn. Those big planets take a long time to move out of signs. So right now we've got Saturn in Aquarius. And again, you know, consider Saturn as the rule keeper, the drill sergeant. Again, conservatism. Aquarius is the peace-loving hippie. Aquarius, as far as the signs go, is all about, yay, let's share everything. Let's not even charge money. Let's make a great big commune and we'll all grow a garden collectively and we'll all get along and sing songs and yay. And Saturn's over here going, no, I pay my taxes. I've earned my living. I'm not doing it. Creepy hippie, get out. So as you can understand, we've got Saturn, the rule planet, in Aquarius, which is the overview, the big picture, the best for all, not the needs of the one, the needs for the all. Saturn is the need for the one, then builds the need for the all. So you can imagine that Saturn is fighting with the sign that it's in addition to fighting the opposed Uranus. Now let's flip over to Uranus's side of the boxing ring. Uranus is leaning up against the corner, and the corner it's leaning on is in Taurus. And Taurus is about little bitty baby steps, solid learning, methodical ways of going forward one step at a time. Saturn is the hare and Taurus is the tortoise. So we've got Saturn going, well, let's throw out money and do crypto. Who even cares? I know, we'll all trade seashells. This is a good idea. I'm Uranus. Whee! And then we've got Taurus over here going, I am more about the gold and traditional money settings, savings, stability, even though the ruling planet of Taurus is Venus, which is opulence and great food and expensive lovely thing and orgies and blah. But as long as it goes at the Taurus's pace, when the Taurus wants it, only when the Taurus wants it, and if there is some sort of structure to all of it, okay? That's Taurus. They don't like surprises and whatnot. Uranus is all about springing surprises on everybody. Whee! And Uranus is in Taurus right now. So if we look at Saturn having an argument with the sign it's in, which is Aquarius, squaring off against Uranus, which it just is basically got nothing in common with anyway, who's having an argument with Taurus that it is in for the rest of 2021, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at push, pull, tug, tug, tug. We are looking at so many ups and down variables in 2021 that as people look at this, they're going to be like, hey, there could be no unity, no harmony whatsoever in the remainder of 2021 because we've got a schizophrenic planet set here that's just not going to make any sense. Well, actually, we are going to see it make some sense. And this is the point that I really want to make with the podcast today, is we are going to see it make a great deal of sense in what's going to look like abrupt, crazy, and big buildings coming down, so to speak, kind of ways. Right now, we're looking at former President Donald Trump's tax records being ripped open and unsealed by the state of New York. Now, if you listen to podcasts that I've been doing since 2016, really, in 2017, I was looking forward in the future, and I was seeing it was going to take a minute. It was going to take a while. Yet that, Donald Trump would go through a period of time where everybody that was close to him would roll on him. They would turn on him. The people the closest to him would turn on him. And that we would come to see that there was a lot of money laundering going through the Trump administration, or not administration, well, maybe, but the Trump organization, all right, the business organization, not he as a president, yet that we would see that there was a lot of money laundering going through that business organization and that there had been for a while. And I've been talking about that on the podcast forever. I've gotten some disturbing email from folks who were big supporters of Donald Trump who felt that I was being very unfair to him. And really, it was nothing personal to Donald Trump. I'm just looking forward into the future, and it looks like there was some money laundering, and it looks like they would expose it, and that's a bummer, right? So it looks like the state of New York is in that process right now, and with Rudy Giuliani getting his apartment raided and all these things, poor Mr. Giuliani, he is just such a character, and I do think when I reach into Rudy Giuliani, it kind of makes me sad because I can feel in their diminished mental capacity. And I don't know what would diminish that, what kind of dementia that's from. I don't know if that's age-related or alcohol-related or any of that. I don't know. But there is some sort of dementia that I sense in him. And therefore, the erratic behavior and all the crazy that we saw over the last couple of years from Mr. Giuliani. So what does this have to do with, well, say, Saturn squaring off with Uranus. Saturn's all about the rules, okay? It's about rules and following the rules. It's about laws. Saturn would be the FBI agent who never, ever, ever got dirty hands or varied from the procedure. Saturn is Captain America. If there was an Avenger, Saturn would be Captain America, just upholding all the right things for the right reasons. And Uranus is Tony Stark. Bending the rules. I can do what I'm going to do. It's all based on what I'm feeling like in the moment. So there's a big, right now in the planets, we've got Marvel's Civil War movie just boiling out. So what's this got to do with Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, all those characters? Well, when I was looking back in 2017 and looking forward and seeing that Donald Trump had some really hard emotional lessons that were going to come to bear for him through being the president. And not only did I get a lot of angry mail from people who are supporters of former President Trump that felt I was being unfair to him, I got angry letters from people who couldn't stand former President Trump saying, how could you stick up for this sociopath psycho? He's a crazy person. How dare you stick up for him? It wasn't that I was sticking up for him. It's my own personal opinion. I feel bad for the guy because he's got karmic lessons. Saturn's about karma too, by the way. He's got major karmic lessons that I could see were going to come in for him that were going to be devastating, especially at his age, You get down the pike a ways and things just get a little rough and get a little scary. The older you get, things can either get really chill or really scary. And former President Trump falls into the category of people where all of that change as an older person strikes him as frightening because of how his life has been set. So here we are with these planets, and we're looking at his tax records getting opened up. And all of those things that I saw back in 2017, 2018, the money laundering and Russian money and mob money and all these other things that were rolling through the Trump organization, starting with his dad. Well, that's going to get poured out into the public now, coming up. Just keep your eye on the news. This is coming. State of New York is going to barf it all out there. And that, in part, is Saturn. So if we look at someone like former President Trump, who has made a life as many, many other people. He's not the only one, gang, okay? So let's not go pitchforks and torches at former President Trump. He's beyond not the only one. Yet he's the lowest hanging fruit of an example that I can find here of somebody who led a life in illusion, skirting the rules, and never having to pay the piper. And he really is, honestly, he's going to get to heaven, you guys, and he's going to win an Oscar for his performance of the old world dying mogul at the 2020s. He's literally going to represent the old modality that went down the chomping on the cigar and the round monocle with his belly hanging out in his suspenders and, crunching over the top of flowers as he walks to his old fossil fuel dynasty. Literally, he is the last of that archetype. And our country is full of that archetype. Our country was built on that archetype, gang. Okay? So with Saturn wringing out the wash rag of rules, Donald Trump is going to get wrung out in all of that as well because he's been skirting the rules for a super long time. So the piper has come in. Why has the piper come in? Because Uranus is sudden revolution and sudden change. And Uranus is not having this. Uranus is like, look, we need to get rid of this. Okay, look, I realize we're fighting Saturn, and I realize we generally don't get along. But I found a rule breaker whose karma hasn't caught up to him yet. That is your department, right? And Saturn's like, well, yeah, it's my department. What are you talking to me for, you hippie freak? And, there's Uranus over there going, look, man, I don't want to fight with you, okay? I happen to love everybody. And as a matter of fact, I'm not even a hippie because I don't even have enough of a sense of self to call myself hippie. So could we just not spit names and you're spitting when you talk, okay? Well, you know what there? You know what, Uranus? You got your head up Uranus. You know that? And you smell like garlic and love. Can't stand you. So they go back and forth. And so Uranus enters in with this argument and says, well, Saturn, I'm sorry that you don't like my nutritional choices, but I do have to tell you that it's time for the karma to be taken. And I am requiring a sudden revolution right now. And we do need a new way to bring in new money. And this guy represents old money. So can we just get together on this one particular gesture and do something about this person's life path? And Saturn says, Well, I ain't doing it for you. I'm doing it because he skirted the rules and he got some karma coming, an ass whooping. That's right. Uranus says, you do you, Saturn. Okay, you do. I can't do this conversation. There's so much negativity here right now. I'm going to go find some kombucha and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to pet the spots on my feet that are related to my heart chakra because you have bad energy, Saturn. Smell like garlic, hippie freak. So this is going on throughout 2021. And this is one of the reasons that we're going to be looking at so much upheaval. Now, again, let's just look at this strictly as a resource, this Donald Trump tax issue, as a resource to demonstrate how these two planets work. So Saturn's going after the karma of the rule-breaking, rule-skirting taxes. I mean, come on, Saturn rules taxes. And then Uranus is going after, look, we need to dump out old systems. We need sudden change. We need to gut the money system and start again. So what better way to do that than to show restriction or show accountability towards someone, a former president who was someone in a big position of power, as well as a position of people knowing who he is across the globe, and to interrupt the cycle of skirting the issue and rules suddenly on him, which is Uranus's thing. That's going to really interrupt a lot because as the Trump organization goes down, which it's going to do, as it goes down and as Donald Trump has to face the piper for a lot of his business decisions, he's not going down without taking everybody else down with him. This is a guy who would rather rip the tablecloth off of the table and destroy the 200-year-old family China as he's plummeting to the ground, trying not to break a hip. He's going to rip that whole entire tablecloth off, and he's going to take everything with him. So that is other very major financial players in this country. Now, you'll notice how the stock market is reacting right now. You know, I'm a big stock market fan. I'm a big crypto fan, obviously, if you've been listening to the podcast. And I'm a fan of these things, not because I come from a big money family or I'm out to make my millions. I'm a fan of them because anybody can make a few bucks if you make smart, informed decisions, but you also use your gut and tap into that money stream. So right now, the stock market is way down. It's on super sale. So if anybody's up for buying stocks on your apps on your phone, this is a good time to do it. The stock market's going to go back up, gang. It's going to take about a year and a half before it really gets back up to where it was, maybe about a year. And it's going to have its moments of getting way up there and then kind of dropping down again. But consistently up, it's going to take about a year, year and a half. And the crypto market, of course, is super volatile because the crypto market is 100% Uranus energy. It's sudden movement. You're in, you're out. Everybody's hot for it and they're dropping it like a hot potato. But just because crypto is down now doesn't mean it's not going to shoot up again, which it is. So if you do have crypto, I really, really encourage everybody not to sell when things are low. Because what happens when we sell when things are low, it creates more lows. Big sell-offs create more lows. And what goes down always comes back up. It's like a funny little buoy. So right now we've got these fears of a recession. Well, there is a recession and inflation, which there is, but the Fed isn't moving interest rates. However, people are afraid the Fed's going to move interest rates, so they're already selling off stock, which to me makes no sense. Like, we literally create our own recessions and depressions by panicking in the United States. Did you know that? It's not something that's happening to us, a recession or a depression or an inflation cycle. That's not happening to us. We're creating that by panicking, and then the reciprocal action that we're bringing forward to us is crappy because we panicked. So please don't sell off stuff if you have it. Just hang on to it, you guys. It's going to come back up, gang. It always does. Right now, it's looking kind of grim. I'm down like $1,100 in the crypto market just over the last week. And I've got funny like $20 here and $20 there and these weirdo little cryptos that might take off later. And I just figure it's just an interesting place to park play money. You know, this is money that I would have spent at Starbucks or I would have bought a pizza with. I just kind of throw it in there instead and see what happens with it. My idea of Vegas, the crypto market. So literally you got a better shot actually than Vegas in the crypto market. But the crypto market, of course, is representative of Uranus. Sudden change though, okay? Whereas the stock market, that's more that Saturn energy. It's kind of slow and steady, wins the race with the stock market. But we're seeing everything at record lows. And that also makes Saturn a little uncomfortable because Saturn likes the status quo. Saturn likes growth. Saturn likes to have that steady, growing finances that are sensible, even though Saturn is financially conservative. And Uranus is absolutely not. It doesn't care. It just wants to see new systems start. And Uranus is sort of like, you'd think of like that brilliant ADHD scientist who's going from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And Saturn is the assistant running behind, secretly resenting the hell out of the genius of Uranus, going, why am I always the one that has to clean up after this? This is so stupid. And it's really because of Saturn that Uranus's great inventions even make it out to the world. Okay, so they do kind of work together, but they also bug each other quite a bit. So as we're looking at former President Trump and what he's got coming in his life, it's going to be rough for him. Now, Uranus and Saturn both deal with busting up illusions, but in different ways. So, Neptune is the planet of illusion, and it's the planet of, hey, look into this mirage, and I know this desert looks like a desert, but someday it's going to be something amazing called Las Vegas. I mean, Neptune deals in the mystic and the future and illusion, and look into the mist to see what's there. Neither Uranus or Saturn are into that. They're into the moment and what can be made into the moment, okay? And really what their big fight is about right now is about how do they sculpt the moment to their liking. And really, they're both after the same thing, just in different ways. So we're going to watch former President Donald Trump's whole organization come down on him. And, it's interesting. Uranus also is about broken bones, broken marriages, sudden divorces or sudden marriages, about families that break apart or might come back together again. And former President Donald Trump's case, we're going to be seeing family rolling on him because their choice is to roll on their dad or they get to go to prison. And that's one of the things that made me sad for Donald Trump because he had a really huge fractured sense of family as a kid. His mom suffered from a lot of mental illness, a lot of depression, a lot of mania. I think she might have been bipolar. She had a lot that she dealt with. And his dad was just this malignant narcissist. So this is how this poor human being came into the world, you guys. And so, gang, this person he kind of was always set up for extremities in his life. So those were the genes he was dealt. And his family being fractured at a young age when he had a lot of kids. And he loves his children like mad. As much as that guy can love anybody, he loves his children. So the fact that he loved his kids so much, he was trying to create a safe group of people that were loyal to him, that loved him. And his dad had kids, of course, and so did his mom. That's what makes a mom and dad, when two adults love each other enough, ... Except for the fact that his father demanded the love and respect. And Donald just fell right in to make his dad happy. So if you think about all the children he had, he was having these kids on this spiritually subconscious level to have people that were loyal to him. His father was loyal to his own money. His father was loyal to the empire he was building. His mother was loyal to whatever mood she had at that moment because she suffered from mental illness, and they just didn't talk about it back then. They didn't deal with it back then. So it's really, really sad when you look at all this, that Donald Trump would have his own family that are going to turn on him as time goes down. And it really started with his niece writing that book. That was probably one of the worst experiences for him, to have family turn on him. But that's also part of this Uranus aspect. And Saturn kind of doesn't care how those lessons come to you. It's just there to bring you your lessons. So it's not always feeling sorry for you in the way that those lessons get to you. As a matter of fact, it's often not feeling sorry. So we're going to watch this happen. And what's going to happen subsequently? when former President Trump has to pay the piper. The astrology is there for him to have to pay the piper. State of New York's up his keister like a 6-day greased enema. And I mean, he just can't get out of this one. And they're pressing his former accountants, and they're pressing them to roll on him, or they're going to charge them with long-standing fraud and lawlessness and money laundering. So, not that I'm a fan of people breaking the law and doing terrible things to people, yet I can't help but notice in human beings their humanity. And really, everybody thinks that Donald Trump had the best time ever as the president. They think that, he's a malignant narcissist, and all he did was love just running the country, being the most powerful man in the world. Well, he had moments of enjoying that. Yet when I used to check on Donald Trump all the time when he was in the White House, psychically, I'm saying. And I'd chat with his angels, and mostly I was just making sure he wasn't going to go crack nuts and whack the nuclear button. I mean, I wanted to be able to give everybody a heads up if we were all going to get fried like little Crispies because of a mood of the former president. So I would check in on him. Plus, I just kind of was wondering how the guy was doing, And what I saw was that he didn't barely have any time to enjoy the power of the presidency. Once in a while he did. Because all he could do is obsess about everybody who didn't like him, which was half the country or more. Half the world or more didn't like him. And that's all he could do was just, he was obsessed with how much people didn't like him. So this guy went from living in this padded, gilded, gold toilet life. He actually has a gold toilet. Where everything was designed to his liking, thrust forward into public service, and you don't get to design everything to your liking in public service. Plus, you're under such an unbelievable amount of public scrutiny, way more than a celebrity ever would be. And he had to hear about how people hated his guts 24/7. In his gilded toilet life, he could protect himself from all of that. So he got flopped out of his fishbowl into a fire hose of discontent. And yeah, of course he had supporters. Why do you think he was always out there on the road doing his shows? I called them shows, his concerts, his Trump concerts. He was out there throwing concerts so he could get the feel-goods from the people who adored him because he was obsessed with the energy of the people who didn't. So you can imagine, speed forward till now, he loses the election, the Capitol riot happens. He's like, look at all those people supporting me. His little heart grew 3 sizes that day as the Capitol was overrun. And so here we've got this person who for the first time in the presidency had public accountability thrown at him. And of course, he's a pathological liar because he's lived in this gilded world where he could sculpt his whole world, right? That's what was taught to him. So Uranus and Saturn are going to get together, and the aspect of Aquarius and Saturn is going to demand that Saturn enact the rules over Donald Trump in a way that would uplift the all. Aquarius is about the equalization of things. It's about being fair. It's about the whole doing better than the individual. So Saturn is enacting the rules, but in the spirit of the all and in the spirit of the collective, okay? Not in singular vengeance in Saturn form, but in the good of the whole. It is enacting the karma and the rules. So then we come over here to Uranus, which is about sudden change and whatever. And Uranus just wants to be out there like the Tasmanian devil, flinging all over the place, throwing law books and getting crazy and throwing jail keys at him and just blah. Except Uranus has Taurus the bull that's got these 2 reins right inside the mouth of Uranus, just holding it back with its bull horns going, oh, no. We're going to go about this methodically. We're going to make sure every single base is covered. And that bull is just pulling back on Uranus, and Uranus is out there going, nah, I want to get him. And Taurus the bull's like, you can get him, baby, but you're doing it on my time. One step at a time, one hoof, 12 million pounds of bull at a time, just one step. So we're watching these big energies come together methodically for the good of the whole, for the karma of an individual and a nation, as well as sudden change, and it will bring revolution. Does that all make sense? Good, we'll move on. So what we're looking at here is, obviously, we still have a lot of people that really believe in and support former President Trump. And they still believe that the media is all fake. And I mean, yes, media is sensationalized. And obviously there are news magazine shows out there that wade way into opinion in order to hold sponsorships, like Fox News and MSNBC, just two different news programs that are on two different spectrums that are actually news magazine shows and news magazine commentary shows rather than news. However, what we're going to see produced by the FBI, what we're going to see produced by the state of New York is the kind of news that goes right up the middle. It goes to the ABC, NBCs, it goes to the BBCs, it goes to the NPRs, and this is where that news goes, because it's going to be just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. So this is going to be really incredible with the Just the Facts, ma'am portion of our programming. And it's going to be overwhelming. But now, what if I'm somebody that believes that all news is out to get Donald Trump? Because that's what I have to believe, right? If I want to believe this guy's a hero, then I can't believe anything negative about him, right? So I need to keep up this illusion that what's happening is not happening. Well, when the state of New York gets him, and it's going to be a process. They're not just going to haul him to prison in 5 seconds. I mean, there has to be due process. Yet, the more this happens, the more former President Trump's followers are getting riled up because they think the deep state is out to get him. And then the deep state's going to be coming for them. So the revolution, and we have two revolutions going on at once in this country. And I really want to make sure to point this out, because as we move further into 2021, you're going to see both of these revolutions happening in different ways. And the first revolution we're looking at is the revolution of love and of coming together and of cutting each other grace and slack so we can get through things. This is what we're seeing. The name calling, the raging, anybody who's going to go into those old world modalities of polarization are going to really struggle during this time frame, because this time frame is about trying to come together and change the system broadly. So the first revolution we have is in a system of grace and love, where people are just getting sick and tired, gang. Have you noticed this? People are getting sick and tired of fighting. And there are some people that live to fight, and that's fine. Knock yourselves out. I will be a very boring person for you because I just don't want to fight. I don't get my personal identity from fighting. I will. I mean, I got grandparents, great-grandparents that were attorneys. I can hold facts in my head for a long time and formulate trillions of arguments around them. I'd rather not. Let's all go sing songs. Let's go sit around a bonfire and do a sing-along and have a beer. I'd rather do that. Or a coffee or iced tea, whatever knocks your socks off. But the love and grace revolution is upon us at the same time that the old world is making its last big plays for dominance in the United States. And that last play for dominance is heavy. It's big. It's a big play. And we've been watching it happen for a while. It was coming on before Donald Trump. He just at least had the gall or the respect, it depends on the way you look at it, to just say it like it was, and not try to hide his disdain for things and his bold need to make money and pretty much run anybody else off the tracks so he could make his money. I mean, he wasn't apologizing for who he was. And guess what else doesn't apologize for what it is? The American corporate business model. It just Pac-Mans through neighborhoods, psyches of human beings, personal lives of people, money. It just Pac-Mans through and eats everything and feeds itself. It's this consumptive, nasty thing that doesn't have a conscience, that just seeks to fulfill its own life. That's a corporation, okay? That's the energy of a corporation. So, as you can imagine, we've got the energy of this corporation, and we also have Donald Trump as a human being, former President Trump, embodying these things. And the other revolution that we have is people trying to hang on to this way of doing things. So we're going to have the love and grace revolution. At the same time, we've got the semi-automatic body armor revolution that we saw on January 6th. Now, the folks who organized that first insurrection were able to do so through the auspice of, we're going to go see the president speak. Now it's a little harder because the FBI is watching the interwebs to find out where these types of gatherings are happening and how folks are communicating. And of course, there's the dark web. But this revolution, there's still going to be this uprising of people all over the place, and they're planning it right now. It's something that's planning, and it's going to be enacted towards state capitals, and it's this big coup showing up in D.C. You know, it's a big deal, and that's one of the reasons we've got some Congress people that happen to be part of the Republican Party that are not wanting to look at the Capitol insurrection because they feel that all it's going to do is continue to divide the country. Well, the bottom line is there were quite a number of people in Congress that were in on the whole thing and knew it was coming because they were part of those chat groups. And so it's just disturbing in so many ways that we're seeing a denial of something that happened because people are afraid they're going to get drug out of Congress and get arrested. That's why they don't want this stuff happening. And also, you know, from a Mitch McConnell perspective, I don't think Mitch McConnell knew that was going to happen. He was genuinely shook up. When I watched him speak, I was psychically checking out that guy's pulse. I was checking out where he was coming from. That guy was generally just truly wigged out by the Capitol insurrection. He was angry. He was horrified. He thought it was terrible. And so right now, I think he's just trying to brand save because he's got a career of brand saving. And also, you got to consider the old world conservative modality, which is just like shove it under the carpet and keep going. It's nobody's business. We'll fix it later. Let's just move on. That's more the conservative way of doing things in general. And of course, you know, the liberal way of doing things is no, we have to talk about it. Now we're going to talk about it till we're also sick about it. And then we're going to give it 500 different titles. And we're also going to give it different ways of looking at itself, but we're going to talk it into the ground. So we need to meet in the middle between talking something into the ground and not dealing with it at all. We need to get into the middle in there and just get some productive solutions going on. And that's really, I think, what President Biden has been trying to do. He's not really a fan favorite of the Republicans. He's not a fan favorite of the progressives and some Democrats. And he doesn't really care because he's just trying to he's kind of going the FDR Democrat route. He's just trying to get some balance going. He's trying to draw it all back to balance as much as he can in 4 years, because I don't think he's going to run again after that. So, you know, it's fascinating to me to watch all this spill out because both of these revolutions are happening at the same time. We've got the revolution of violence and we've got the revolution of love and grace. Now, you might be listening to this going, well, wait a minute. If these revolutions hit head on and one group's carrying semi-automatic weapons and the other one's carrying love and grace, doesn't that automatically mean that the side that's carrying the guns, aren't they going to overpower the revolution that's just there for love and grace? And actually the answer is no. And let me tell you why. And this is something that I've gotten an opportunity to see through these planetary energies and how they're working themselves out. In essence, Saturn battling and duking it out and opposing Uranus through the rest of this year cancels each other out. They cancel each other out in a really interesting way. So what's really left behind is the effect of, well, Aquarius and Taurus. And Taurus is just like, let's just go about, hey, Taurus is, you ever watch a bull? Have you actually seen a bull in person? I've seen lots of bulls. I live in Montana. And my wife and I have some land outside of town. And on that land, we oftentimes will have cows that will come through grazing. Cattle will come through grazing. And it's just, we're up against BLM land. So here comes these cows. And there's always a bull just riding along with all his chicks. And the cattle, the female cattle, will keep moving. They will leave those bulls in the dust. Because a bull will move about 50 feet in about 3 days. I'm not kidding you. They stand there and they look at things. And they eat a grass blade. And then they look at things and huff. And they eat another grass blade. And they look at things. This is a bull. Okay, now, if you make it mad, it's going to run you over with all 3,000 pounds of its badass self. But it's just standing there until it decides to move on. That's a bull. That's Taurus. So we've got the Taurus energies, which are just standing there right now. And the Aquarian energies going, yay, while we're all standing around, let's do things that really uplift everybody else. Let's learn from our mistakes. Let's just come together. Let's love one another right now. And here's all the great big guns being pointed. And here's Aquarius running around sticking daisies down the barrel of the gun, just like that iconic photo from the Vietnam era. So what we're going to be left with are two big planets that sort of cancel each other out because they're both kind of going for the same thing, with this over effect of the whole raising its consciousness through one step at a time action that's very deliberate. Okay? That's really what we kind of come up with in all of this. And in the meantime, Saturn's rounding up all the rule breakers, and Uranus is revolutionarily changing things and sending people to Mars and doing all kinds of stuff on the outskirts of the establishment. But it's all happening for the betterment of society, one step at a time. And, the thing about Taurus is it doesn't like to be broke. It doesn't like to be poor. Taurus likes money. It likes beautiful things, darling, beautiful things, beautiful coats and figs and drinks and beautiful hair and beautiful things. So Taurus doesn't want us to go broke. And Aquarius could give a crap about money. Not really. Aquarius doesn't really care about money. It just cares about provision and flow, not about the individual shekels themselves. So what we've got are two aspects of signs that want to make sure that nobody's left behind and nobody has crappy anything. Okay? So if you think about the way that this is shaken out, it's really fascinating. I think it's super fascinating. I get super fascinated by this stuff. And part of the biggest fascination that I have here is that it's all going to happen so fast. We're going to see the Trump family dynasty fall. We're going to see many other business dynasties that are attached to the Trump one. Because again, Trump's going to grab onto that tablecloth as he falls down onto the carpet, the white carpet with his glass of wine, red wine, really super red wine. So the whole thing is just blah, coming apart. And both of these revolutions serve a purpose. Because when all these folks uprise, because they feel that their fearless leader has been reined in by the deep state, otherwise known as just the law, they're going to feel like they need to protect the United States all over again. They're not going to be able to organize to the degree that they did for January 6th, but it's going to be pretty hardcore. And we are not going to respond as a collective the same way that we did from 2016 to 2020. There's not going to be the big online fights. The collective, the Peace, Love, and Harmony Grace Collective is going to watch all of this fear and all of this uprising. And obviously the law is going to suppress it. I feel badly for people who honestly believe that their purpose is to overthrow the American government, because guess what? There's just too much money there. Sorry, you guys. The only way we could literally overthrow a government like America's is if every single human being stopped paying taxes and stopped upholding the law. And that's really not going to happen. But there's a lot of people that believe that if they get out their big guns and they march in and play the piccolo and wave the old traditional flag with the 13 colonies, that they can actually bring change. And more power to you. Good for you. But that's just not going to be allowed to happen. Not that way. The way that we can affect change is when we see these Pied Pipers of the old revolution marching around in their body armor to come. Then the Love and Grace Army is over there going, oh, look at all these scared people. You guys, you have to stop acting like this. Put that thing down. You're going to hurt yourselves. Just come have some pizza, you gang. This is so over the top. We don't even have room for this in our society anymore. Now, that is the Peace, Love, and Harmony Army. We're going to have the National Guard and police and everybody else getting out there and saying, I'm sorry, but you have to put that gun down. It's just sad that there are so many people that are actually, we're all fighting for the same thing. I know a lot of people here in Montana who are sort of that don't tread on me mentality. And if you're not familiar with that, it's this yellow flag with the snake that says, don't tread on me. And that comes from the American Revolution. And you have to remember that we revolted from England. We revolted not because we were going for this wonderful way of life, not because all humans were to be created equally. We revolted over taxes, over money. We had a bunch of white men in charge who didn't want to give up their money to the other white guy across the pond. We revolted over money. And so this is really what caused our country to become the Americas on their own, was not wanting to pay too many taxes. So we still have a group of people here all these years later, 200, 300, 400, whatever years later, where they still are under this, I don't want to pay that many taxes, except the problem now is that we've created a system that eats our taxes to feed its soul. So it's a lot harder to overthrow that system now when we're on its own soil. So if you're one of those don't tread on me folks, I've had this conversation with I have a few really good friends here in Montana that happen to be the don't tread on people. They're 10th generation rancher. They've never left the state in forever. That's their world. And I've asked them, how far do you think you're going to get against the world's most advanced military, against drones that can look at the color of your iris from 100,000 miles up in the atmosphere? How do you think you're going to get around defeating that opponent with your freaking bear shotgun? I mean, what are you going to do? That's like throwing rocks at the moon and hoping you knock it out of the sky. It's so embarrassing. And my friends who are my don't tread on me friends, they all say the same thing. And what they say is they would rather die fighting for the principle of what they consider to be freedom than just succumb to the big machine. They'd rather be dead. They don't want to live in a world where they think the machine is eating their freedoms. And I'm thinking to myself, well, darlings, unless you go down to South America and hide in the Amazon, I don't know where you're going to find that climate. I mean, the first world on the earth is all about control through financial allocation. I mean, even in America, we don't own our homes ever. You're always going to pay taxes. You're always going to rent the land that your house is on until you die. That's what taxes are. You're going to pay them to the state, and sometimes you're going to get out of that, but you're going to pay it to the government. You don't ever own your land outright in America. You lease it from the government, and they're called taxes. But that's the closest we've got to ownership in America, right? And then you sell that land, and then you just pass the lease on to somebody else, and they pay the lease called taxes on that land, and they just rent it from the government indefinitely. That's what we do. So the idea that we are living in this free nation, and I'm just talking economics, gang. Do not get me started on the social inequities and the gender inequities in this country. We'll be here for 100 years. I'm just talking about financial stuff here. So the don't tread on me friends that think they're going to liberate themselves from this first world modality of ownership would literally rather die. They'd rather die the death storming the Capitol and have their kids tell the story of how great-granddad Crawdad crawled up the wall and got shot in the face for the American dream. That is the currency in that family, is the idea, or really kind of the myth of freedom. We're more free in America than we are in other countries, of course. I recognize that. Yet we're not just living here for nothing. That's not how it works to be an American. And that's why a lot of people get angry at undocumented folks who come into the country, because they're supposedly not paying the same taxes we are and doing all of these other things. Yet they're also not able to enjoy society to the degree that many of us do, who pay taxes and have driver's licenses and all these other things. So, it's 6 of one and half dozen of another. So why is this an important thing to know? Why is it an important thing to know that we have two revolutions going on right now? We have the Don't Tread on Me revolution, and we have the Love and Grace revolution. And why is it important to know that the Love and Grace revolution is the modality that at the end of the day comes out smelling like a rose? Why is that important? Well, it's important because it's important that we don't get into violence with the folks who are going to get violent, okay? Because that feeds that, if you want to call it a movement of violence, the only way the movement of violence works is to have more violence fuel it. Because it's awfully hard to fight against nothing. That's like a sail on a large old ship just going limp over the sea because no wind is in it, right? We don't want to put wind in the sails of violence. Now, we do have structured systems in place to be an interrupter of that violence. We have structured systems in place. The National Guard, police, we've got, marshals, we've got all kinds of folks, sheriffs, who are trained to intercept violence. So the rest of us, it doesn't help to get on Facebook when all this is going to come up. Something about October. Keep your eyeballs on October. October keeps coming up over and over again for just weirdness in this don't tread on me area. But when it comes up on Facebook, gang, we can do our part. If you relate with the Grace and Love Army and the collective army that's just trying to really resonate this planet and get it to a different level of understanding so we can understand one another. If you're there and you feel that resonates with you, please don't go online. And once this, we'll call it the Don't Tread on Me uprising happens, if you can do your best not to go online and post those news articles and say things like, look at these mother effers, F these mother effers, I hope they burn in hell, because you are fueling their movement that way. Are you hearing me? If you don't agree with the modality of violence, then do not get on and be violent verbally, because you will energize that base like you have no idea. How about getting on there and saying, oh, this breaks my heart. This is so sad. I'm so sorry that this had to happen in our country. Can we all just come together? Try that. Because it's awfully hard to fight against somebody who's not going to fight with you. And it's different. You can post anything you want on your own Facebook page. I post critical analyses all the time of political figures. We've got a governor in Montana right now who's a very different character. And, it wouldn't matter if he was a Democrat or a Republican or a leprechaun or a giraffe. He just really should not be in the position of civic service at all. He's a former CEO of a large tech company. He's a billionaire. And he really doesn't understand the problems that a state like Montana has, which is traditionally a low-income state. It's filling up with very wealthy people moving here to retire at 30 because they sell their house in California for $6 or $7 million, and they move here and buy a gorgeous 6 or 7 bedroom house for $500,000 or $600,000 and bank the rest of that money, earn the interest, and they're retired. So we have a lot of people piling into Montana right now who are not coming into our workforce, who are able to just enjoy all of what Montana has to offer. Yet they're not really, they're buying things, they're contributing to Montana's economy, yet they're really probably not going to go work at the gas station. So we have a labor shortage here in Montana with people piling in and with services being needed, yet there's really nobody doing those jobs. And part of the reason that we're losing people doing those jobs is that as all the money piles into Montana, what happens? Well, the property values shoot up. Homeowners aren't stupid. They want top dollar for their house. And all the rents go up because all of a sudden you have people coming in with millions of extra dollars in their pockets to spend. So this is pricing out the local culture. And the local culture is moving out of town. And they're moving into, little bitty towns all over Montana where they can actually afford an apartment, where they can actually afford a house. And Montana used to be a really affordable place to live. People think it's very, very affordable to live here. If you're thinking of moving to Montana, I wouldn't bother because we don't have any sales tax, but our state income tax is insane. Our vehicle license fees are through the roof now. And we have a governor and a Congress now who are basically passing really weird anti-trans laws, and you can carry guns on college campuses. They're trying to be a template. I think Gianforte, our governor, is going to run for president in 2024. I'm pretty sure he is actually, because he's passing these laws that are big national agenda, Washington, D.C. laws, and they have nothing to do with Montana. Why am I telling this story? I'm telling this story because we're already seeing the Don't Tread on Me army infiltrate into Montana legally, logistically, and through legislating. And so we've got all these peace, love, and harmony people in Montana. Lots of them are Republicans. Don't be fooled by People's Political Party that are looking at this other weird, I would call it Empire Strikes Back need to take over just for the power of it. And that's what we've got out here in Montana. Every time I see Gianforte's picture, I just think of, it's hilarious. My internal scope in my head is a giant cartoon. And every time I see Gianforte in my head, I hear dun 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 dun. The whole Darth Vader theme, right? Because it really just seems like the only reason the guy is here is to take over something. It reminds me of the Empire in Star Wars. And that's kind of the Don't Tread on Me. Folks are aligning with that, but what they don't realize is the Empire is not the Don't Tread on Me people. That's a whole different talk for a whole nother day. However, if I'm posting something on Facebook about Governor Gianforte, I'm just mostly usually telling what he's doing and saying this is not the way we do things in Montana, and letting people know that, hey, did you guys know this is happening? That your hunting and fishing licenses are going to be hard to get if you're in state because they've all been sold to out-of-state people? Or that the in-state hunters have to pull, the elk tags, gang, are really hard to get here. I'm not a hunter, but lots of my family hunts. And elk tags are hard. They're hard to get because elk aren't everywhere. And elk is really good eating. Let me tell you, it's good. It's good. So a lot of people want to put the elk in their freezer. And what's rough there is that you have to have those tags drawn oftentimes, like a lottery. Like you get drawn for an elk tag. So you may or may not get picked in Montana for an elk tag. And currently our more Darth Vader style governor, who's just kind of selling off Montana to whoever can buy it, is guaranteeing elk tags to all of his wealthy out-of-state people who want to come in here and trophy hunt. And they want to shoot wolves and bears. And this is the consciousnessless modality of the old world trying to hang on. And then we've got a lot of these, again, it's very deceiving. People aren't cut from the same cloth. We've got a lot of what people would consider, GOP, but these are the folks that are, they're conservationists. A lot of these hunters who are Republicans out here are huge conservationists, and they're looking at Gianforte, who's a Republican or whatever he is, and they're saying, what are you doing? You can't just go around shooting bears and wolves. That ruins the ecosystem. What are you doing? So it's time to, in this square off, and all of that had a point, believe it or not, we're in this Saturn and in this Uranus timeframe. We're also being asked to not judge a book by its cover. We're being asked not to just cast people in roles that we've become familiar in casting them in. Because, like I just gave an example, there's a lot of people listening to this podcast that would think of a hunting Republican, quote, red person as some hardcore Trumper who wants to dig up the earth and go after the coal and doesn't care about human rights and doesn't care about the environment. And that's not true. When you get into the traditional Montana Republican, just doesn't want to be overtaxed. That's it. They don't care who you marry. They do not see skin color. They could care less. Just don't overtax them. Okay. So there's this whole power grab thing that we're seeing. I really wish we could stop calling it a Republican issue, because that's not the issue. It's an energetic issue of the old world dying. It is a consumerist issue. It is the sociopathic consumerist system that's trying to keep itself alive. All right? And so if we don't treat that with violence and we don't treat it with elevating it, but we do bring to attention imbalance so we can correct the imbalance, but we do it in a way that's not heinous and not feeding the violence, that's how we get through this year. Does that all make sense? I realize this podcast today is super dense with information. It is. Like, you might have to go back and re-listen to this one, because it's like, God, how much more can she pack in here? Lord almighty, what are you doing? Packing a U-Haul to move across country, sister? Stop! But I wanted to let you know that's what's going on. So if you're experiencing difficulty personally in making a decision, don't worry about it right now. Life's going to end you up where you're going to end up. If you can't get your compass to come out of spinning, don't worry about it right now. The compass is caught between Saturn and Uranus, and it's going to keep spinning a minute. What do you do? What do I do during this time? Ground in every day. Wake up and be incredibly present in your day. This is not the time frame to make big long-term plans, okay? Get up through the next of this year and just make this next day the best day you have ever had. Figure out something to give you joy. Figure out something fun. You are going to be living day to day. If you're going to make a plan, I think the most planning you could do is maybe a couple of weeks to a month. But even then, things are going to change. The winds are going to shift. So, go ahead and make travel plans. Do whatever you're going to do. Yet the way that you live presently, day to day, enjoy, make your life the best life it can possibly be. Make yourself the happiest person you possibly can. I can't control any of the big evil empire stuff. Neither can you. We can't control these big planets. We can only control ourselves. And that's even hard sometimes. And requires hugs, tequila, good music, and sometimes a good book. And just retreating from the world. So just understand, if you're a little lost right now, it's okay. And yes, there are ways that our angels can help us navigate this immediacy, yet we are also being asked to drop a bunch of behaviors that were non-healthy behaviors. So drop those behaviors right now. We've got a lot going on and gutting ourselves emotionally about our old crutches in our old systems. That's another podcast. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to follow this podcast up with the podcast of how do we deal with all this emotional excavation going on in ourselves right now. But just from a tactical standpoint, live in the moment, be in the day. This is all going to be okay. Love is already won, by the way, and that's literally what all this fuss is about right now, because the non-love folks are kind of unhappy about that. So go forward, love, be very present, know you're not going crazy. Yes, we're all stuck in the chaos, but at the same time, this is what brings in harmony, and it is what's going to change the world. So let's be part of that solution. Let's go, love and grace. I love you, and I will see you next podcast.